Johnny, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're gonna have a little change in the order of the agenda. We're gonna go with number 5 first because, Tom Harshagen runs our senior, what do we call it? Senior repair program.
Don't run it.
Yeah, well, you pretty much do, and you have to get back to work. So why don't you come up and
Okay.
talk to us about our plans for the summer?
Okay, last year we had one show at the beach. We called it Wednesday by the water at Wade's. And it was like in the middle of August, and there was no fundraising or anything like that. It was just, to have music at the beach for people for free. It worked out really well. We had a food truck, which was really pretty much overwhelmed. We're trying to fix that this year. But also, in conversation with Supervisor Siller, there was an expressed, maybe a need, not a need, but a want for, a couple more shows. So we put one in June, one in July, one in August. I think it's June 28th, and at the end of July as well, because we have to get by the play, and then one in August. And we have a rain date for each. It's pretty much just going to be the same. We put out a platform, but a tent. We have maybe a couple of extra garbage cans and, a food truck coming down there. It's not, loud music really. I mean, people really liked the volume of it last year, and we're sensitive to it. So we're just asking the town for an abatement of the noise ordinance for that, for those particular dates. And people can bring, food, or they can buy from the food truck. We're working on that also. I've lined up a couple of spots, for the show. So the band gets paid, and last year Southbury did it, but we're going to try and, hit up a couple of other people around the island for that. So, who has questions?
Tom, do you see the need for 2 food trucks this year?
The thing is with two food trucks don't make any money and they don't want to come. One food truck that can handle it would probably be better. So, I'm in conversation with Sylvester about who would do it. If there turned out to be 500 people there, which I doubt, you might have a need for 2.
Yes, Sylvester Manor, I don't follow it.
I'm sorry? Sylvester Manning, well, we had for a long time concerts down there by the water, and we had food trucks that would show up there. And the complaint that we got from some of the food trucks is, I came all the way out here and I didn't make any money, or I just made enough to get by. And that was because we tried to give the selection to the audience, but at the same time, want to keep the vendors happy. So there's a little bit of a, give and take with that. So we're trying to, make it
The
happen.
only reason I really ask is we have 2 food trucks on the island.
Right.
We have one at Wade's Beach and one at Crescent Beach.
Right.
So it would be a matter of,
Well, who's the one at Wade's Beach?
Stars is gonna open this year.
Oh, well, then I should talk to them,
Yeah.
right, about it. But they should know that the volume will be pretty heavy that day.
Yeah.
Right. And if he feels that, we want to bring another truck, and we can try, like Matataco or something like that. But that said, it'll be, and I'm happy to give the opportunity to the
Sure.
island business, of course.
I think
Because they already have, well, Stars already has a permit to serve on Wade's
So,
Beach.
so
that might be a good place
I'll have
to
some
start.
conversation with Pepe.
that's good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
What is it, are you, the same,
group for all 3.
Yeah, although this time we might invite a couple of local people. Certainly we want Sarah Monday to join us one time. And I know that Lisa's involved with the play heavily, so there may be a day when she can only do an abbreviated portion or whatever, and we get somebody else in play. But, we know a lot of bands.
Yeah.
And we just, well, I want to be sensitive to Joe Loro's precedent, here. I don't want anyone to think that this is another iteration of that, and he hasn't had a discussion about that, but this is in no way anything like that. It's not an all-day affair, and it's a big difference, and I think the people.
Oh, it's nice, we went last year.
And it was
Very well well attended.
Thank you.
Now, you're working with Bethany in the rec department
Yes,
too,
yes.
right? So
Yep.
it's coordinated with the town.
But technically, they don't really need it.
It's on town property,
Noise
so,
ordinance. It's the recreation department.
and it's done by 7:30, right?
Yep,
4:30 to 7:30.
4:30 to 7:30. We try to catch the dinner crowd and not go too late.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You don't really need a noise exemption. Permission to use the beach during the summer.
Anybody else?
Really nice.
Tom, thanks very much. Thanks for stepping up.
Good luck, Tom.
Good, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I got lots of vision.
Should we do, the rest of it?
No. Let's have to.
That's good.
Okay, let's go back, we'll go back on schedule then. First thing on the agenda now is Suffolk County Department of Health. There's water testing for us. Matt's here to discuss it with us. Matt's the newest member of the Waterways Management Advisory Council, and he's really stepped up big time.
Yeah. This is, let me just introduce this, because this data has been there, and Matt has spent many hours uncovering it and organizing it so that it's actually useful to us in knowing what's going on in our waters now.
Sure, thanks, yeah, so it's, yeah, just a little, it's more, the data that I collected is more than just South and Suffolk County, it's also DEC as well, just to be clear about that. So, the next slide. There are various different programs, so there are the Suffolk County programs, they've got a marine program, they go around with a boat and to different locations. We've got a beach program. The New York DEC also does a similar sort of boat program. And the final one is a paralytic shellfish poisoning program. If you want to go to the next slide. So, unfortunately, I actually mapped out the test site locations. It doesn't really show very well on the paper copy. You'll see it much better actually on the screen.
Okay.
Shelter Island profile is kind of anyway, but there are different locations that the DEC covers and then Suffolk County covers in terms of on the waterways. So one of the things I noticed looking at the Suffolk County information was they really didn't have any information at all for Daring Harbor, and so that's actually filled in with the DEC. I show some data later on. I didn't actually incorporate those two into one data set. It's more than I could handle. I had to get that to work. So I tried, I failed, because that's the story of it. So yeah, you can see, anyway, there are a lot of sites up in the DEC, the green, in Daring Harbor. Then the sort of red sites are the different Suffolk County marine locations. Beach locations, I think, are sort of in the salmon color, mostly Crescent Beach, but also along Crescent Beach. The Beach Club, and then Wades as well. And then the blue locations are the paralytic shellfish poisoning locations.
So Matt, they monitor the Pridwin and the Pearlmans also?
Yeah. They go in, I'll talk about sort of the specific details of what they do. Want to go to the next slide, actually. So each of these marine locations for Suffolk County, and actually for the DEC, they test for fecal coliform. They do this on sort of like a monthly or bi-monthly basis. With the beach program, they come in just in the summertime, and they go to basically everywhere where they sort of consider it to be a swimming location, like a destination. So it's got a lifeguard or a camp. It's primarily those that brings up all the locations here on Shelter Island. So those are the drivers for when they do it. Again, for the beach program, it's weekly through the season, and then they don't do anything in the winter. So that kind of gives you, and with the beach program, they're testing for Enterococci, E. coli. It's analogous to the fecal coliform, but not exactly the same test. And actually, each one of them uses a slightly different test, so they're not completely comparable. You can't take a number from one and just directly compare it to another. So I think the paralytic shellfish poisoning, they hang bags of mussels and stuff like that to grow off of docks. The data on there was only really collected or only available to me for 2016 and 2019. So I did look at it. not as, I took it out actually when when I presented to the Waterways Committee, I put it in there. I decided it actually made it a bit confusing because I'll talk about why a little bit. So overview of the next slide. So the overview, I mean, basically what you see is, for the most part, not a lot. If you look at sort of this top one, this is the New York DEC. It's a time series of data from from 2010, basically up to last year. And really, and this is the case for most of these testing programs, most of the testing is zero, or at the minimal level. Like, look, there's not a detectable level of any. And so you see all those dots along the bottom. That's what it's showing. It's either some combination of zero or below detectable levels, and so those show up slightly differently in terms of the marks on the graph. It's much more obvious actually in the middle one where it says the Suffolk County marine testing. They're kind of two units. They just 1 0 and 1 is their minimal detectable level. It's like 18 or 20, so that's why it's 2 rows. You do see a couple of higher spots, and I sort of put some emphasis on that, on those elevated levels. The beach, and then sort of on the beach testing, which is the bottom, there's much more variation. You can see that sort of those levels a little bit more. I want to emphasize that none of these are really that bad. So just to be clear, but they show more variation in what's going on. Let's see.
They show more variation, and Matt, if we look at this, I don't see a trend. Do you?
Yeah, no, I didn't really see a trend.
No.
There's a slight trend, but it's not meaningful. I actually have a later slide that'll talk about that.
Okay.
Actually, you can if you look at it really hard, you can see something, but it's not that. So with the next slide, these are sort of I pulled out some of the elevated levels for the Suffolk County Marine and the PSP programs. Just sort of individual locations and sort of can actually have data for it, and what sort of the observations were. And overall, if you look over it on the sort of the observations column, and then it sort of says below that total and detectable. This is what I'm talking about. The total, these are all the different samples. And then under detectable is like where there's actually a number that they could say, this isn't zero. And so, and for instance, for Cockles Little Ram, it's 3% of the samples actually showed something that was detectable. So it showed some stuff that's detectable, but overall, the vast majority of samples are saying there's nothing here. There's nothing that they're catching. And then sort of like down the track, so the other ones are like 1% even lower. So Cockles was sort of the highest at 3%, but it's really, and even there, like the sort of the furthest right column at 330, that's sort of their highest level. It gets to be sort of like the cause of, or they sort of like the warning lights. It's not like alarm, it's like warning above 1,000 would be sort of analogous number here. So it's like 330. It's elevated and notable that it's up there, but it's not super high.
Yeah.
And that was again the highest sort of level for the standard sort of marine testing, the PSP. In that sort of 3-year time frame, he actually came up with a much higher level of fecal coliform in the water. And I think the primary difference there is where they're actually testing. So they're testing right by shore, as opposed to out in the middle of the water column. So that ends up leading to a differential result. And that's actually, so same with the beach fronts. Those are also closer to the water, and so that's kind of also, or closer to the shore, that's also why you see likely higher level. For comparison, not to throw Sag Harbor under the bus, but I put some Sag Harbor locations on there that actually the Suffolk County was originally attributed to Shelter Island, but they were mislabeled. And so actually them in here. And so you note that there are higher levels there as well. So relative to, say, Sag Harbor, we're doing great.
What exactly is the PSP?
It's paralytic shellfish poisoning. So they're testing to see if the shellfish that might be going onto the market are actually poisonous. And so there are particular pathogens in there that I think the fecal coliform is actually one of the range of sort of test items that they actually look for. So that's just one. It happened to be one of the things they collected. And so
You said they hang the mussels, they hang bags, or they don't harvest them? Do they?
I don't know, they're hanging bags. I mean, John was talking about how they do that right off the dock.
Right.
He says that they're still doing it. I have no data from the results you asked, and so that's sort of a follow-up question I actually have.
Who's the paralysis for, the shellfish or people who eat it? People who.
Oh, it's for people, yeah.
Yeah.
People who, shellfish aren't moving a whole lot.
Yeah.
But if it's, it's a question of, I think my understanding was that they started looking at that because, hey, we think this is a problem. And
You said that was the DEC?
That's Suffolk County.
Oh, that is health department.
But actually, but shellfish is actually, and shellfish harvest is actually, appears to be the driver for why the DEC
Right.
is collecting
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
And that's really what, they look at it. And I don't know exactly why the DEC is so focused on Daring Harbor, because they have a whole lot of sites between sort of on the north side of the island and then Greenport. And
That's
down
because the wastewater treatment plant is right there by North Ferry, so it washes down towards Deering Harbor in its marina, and Greenport is on the same area. So it's just a high concentration of potential.
I guess that's it for that slide. I did pull out the specifics for the elevated, yes. So here, sort of put these sort of in table form to sort of give you a little more about the specifics of each individual sort of detectable level for the Suffolk County Marine, because there really aren't that many. There were actually substantially more detectable levels for the DEC. So overall, that's that sort of, they're much higher levels, generally speaking, which is a difference between, say, Daring Harbor and everywhere else. One of the things I noted, and it's sort of highlighted here in light green, we talked a bit about this at the waterways, was the impact, influence of rain. And actually, it's pretty significant. And I actually went back and looked at the data between sort of waterways meeting and now.
Yeah.
It's much more significant.
Then you.
The data on rainfall was actually difficult to process. They don't take down, for Suffolk County, you don't note when they actually take the sample. And so DEC, for instance, they actually take water, they note when they take the sample, and they actually themselves collect rainfall data starting from 72 hours ahead. Whereas that's not available at all for Suffolk, and so I had to sort of compile it myself. And I used NOAA data, and they don't accumulate it on the same way.
Right.
So it's actually very difficult to get, say, anything the day of that was, but not the evening after the sample.
Right.
And so that it got quite muddy. And actually, there were a decent number of gaps for this sort of what NOAA was attributing to Shelter Island. I filled that in with islip. Turns out that wasn't the best idea. And so I went back and I found some other information from Weather Underground. It's suffice to say that they're actually, it rains local. And so it actually really matters if it's raining right here on whatever creek is then flowing out to where the sample location is. It makes a huge difference. And so, one of the recommendations I might have is Shelter Island looking into what if we're actually, care about this issue, what rainfall information can we get and can we sort of systematize? And then tie into the testing so hey, actually we have our own data. We can actually look at this test and say, was this a rainfall related event or is it something else like the boat or whatever?
Well, Ken Peischer does, I believe he takes rainfall data every day.
Every day.
Every day, Ken Peischer on Water Advisory Committee.
Okay.
He loves sharing data,
Okay.
so.
Yeah. So that would be useful. The other thing to note, and it's sort of, some of it's related to, it's sort of highlighted in sort of salmon color. Some of the sites did have high tests on the same day. So there's some degree of correlation between sites. So it's not totally independent. Some moved together, not completely, but somewhat. Some of that's tied likely through rainfall, but not all of it. See that the August 29 and 2010, those are elevated levels, but again, really not very high. These are detectable. And they're moving together on this. Similarly, with the DEC, some of those sites, again, move together. I called this all sort of like just first, second, and third bridge. Hopefully that's clear. One other thing that on this sort of this bottom chart, they also track the ebb and the state of the tide relative to when they tested it. And it's notable that all these high samples, higher samples were during the ebb. So it's actually, they're capturing, for the most part, things coming out of the different creeks associated with those bridges. I think we'll go to the next slide. That's okay. Any questions? I looked a bit at the sort of the seasonality of when these things are occurring. And so this is all that data being for month of the year when the sample occurred. So it took, all the different years, throughout the year and just look at the month when it's happening. And this is for the DEC sites. So these are all basically Darien Harbor. You can actually see, so that this top one is sort of outer, that's right in the middle of the harbor, essentially. Maybe a bit towards Greenport, if you remember the map. And basically there's almost nothing happening, regardless of where you are in the year. Maybe, in the middle of, I guess it's July, one slightly elevated note. But then if you start looking at the different locations, the three in the middle, if I call it Jax, I apologize, I shouldn't have called it North Ferry and Jax, but it happens, I guess. So the Jax is actually first bridge, this one's first bridge. And so you see that there actually is some elevation in the summertime, and it goes up. And note also this is a log scale, so it accentuates the lower ones. It's just to be able to see what's going on. So it's really low level things are happening. You can see that more is happening in the summer. It's not, you can barely see this on the printed paper, but it's more clear on the screen, is that there's that red line at the top is sort of that level of concern, I guess, kind of put in there across those. So really this is very low level, but you can see some sort of movement in the summer and into the fall. And it is notable that it's really the inner ones. And those locations are right off shore, right by the creeks. You see the highest levels off of First Bridge. But notice that the highest, that really those high marks above 1,000 are in March and October. So not actually summertime. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The next slide, unless you have any questions about this. The beaches. The beaches actually, there's a decent amount more information. Beaches. Here it's sort of that same approach. It took the levels, and these are all levels. The level of concern here is 104. It's CFU per 100 milliliters. Whatever. But at that level, if a beach tests over that level, they come back and test again. And if they come back and test again, then they look at shutting beaches. And that's sort of the process of like go test, come back in a couple of days, test again, see if it's an ongoing issue. It's never been an ongoing issue for any locations on the island. These are the different for each individual spot or location I just sort of called out. In that year, had there been a test over. There aren't that many. You can see a little bit of a trend, but it's not that dramatic. And one of the reasons why 22, sort of makes it seem like more of a trend is that all four locations all had an over limit event on the same day. And so we look at that a little bit more in the next page, next slide, actually. So again, the same thing is sort of pulled out the over limit details. You can see on the screen, you really can't see on the page here. Again, the green are all water or rainfall involved dates, where with one of those different sites, whether it's like the different whether underground sites are looked at, or ice lip or shelter island, according to NOAA, had on one of those days. And so that's actually, again, it's much more significant. And actually, there were several more when I went back and looked relative to the waterways presentation that actually showed up here. It didn't show up before. So I would say that the rainfall is a significant driver. Again, it's not all because there's some elevated levels, which doesn't appear to be rain. But you note at the bottom that one day where a lot of beaches all had elevated levels. The next slide kind of takes a look at that. This is hopefully this is not a confusing plot, but this is time series from the beginning of 2010 to the present. And I split it out all these by location. So this is each individual beach gets its own color and sort of line. It's the same information for each one, but just split out that way because it seemed like when they were all together, it was a bit too confusing. Here you can see, again, it's log scale, so it's, things aren't as high as they might appear. You can see a little bit of a trend upwards. And this also includes the ones that are below the limit, so they didn't show on the previous chart. So I did this sort of to show, hey, what's going on in the low level? Is it something that you should pay attention to? And you can sort of see they're bubbling up more towards that line more recently. It's not dramatic, but it is, you can see a bit more if you look hard enough.
It'll be interesting to see over time if the measurements taken in front of the Pridwin go down, given all the IA system work that they've just completed.
I mean, it's certainly conceivable this could be construction related.
Yeah,
All that work is,
true.
an impact, but then it'll, drop off in the future.
Yeah.
You can also kind of see an impact from just the volume of people we've had coming through. So you notice that during the pandemic years, it's much lower. Like there's less showing up, but also less testing was done.
Yeah.
So, and we were really busy before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Those were some peak years
Yeah.
for summer tours and that kind of thing. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did seasonality for the next page. Seasonality, same thing. It shows up again. It shows up better on the screen. These are just again bin by month. So during the year, what's happening, and you see a little bit of a May, June, May, July, August sort of differential. But again, it's not much. And all those dots along the bottom, those are each individual sample. I changed from before. I did a box plot, and I think that confused a lot of people. So every sample gets its own dot. You can see it's sort of like the anybody play Galaga and see the little wings there, the X-rays at the end. So those are extra observations just stacked up on top of each other. So it's just wasn't enough space for them. So again, it's almost all observations are along that bottom, and then a little bit comes up. You can, so if you look closely, you can see those other observations that were above the limit, above that red line. Those are the ones that made the table. And I did a similar look for weekly. I didn't include a table, but to see if there was any impact from holiday weekends and stuff like that. Didn't really seem to come out. It might be the way that data is collected, which could muddy it. My analysis could also have not actively pulled that out. It didn't seem. Also, when they test, they're not coming in on. If they're coming in after, or they might not come in that week because of, it's a short week. So it's final. So my sort of like conclusions looking at it, the next slide. Water's clean.
Yay.
That's my takeaway. You can see some stuff if you look hard enough. And, it's not like there's nothing, there are things going on and things are a bit rising, but overall, it's pretty good to me. And the sort of the origin of looking at this was, John asked me to look at the data, and I think it was prompted by the pump out boat question. I had a significant, I had a couple long conversations with people at Suffolk County and also with the folks who are collecting DEC and asking, hey, if we were to test for this, how we go about it. Like the challenge they said was it's really difficult to test for this. So for vessel related discharges, it's like it's only an aggregate is it really going to show up. I asked if we could do a sort of a statistical analysis of the entire Peconic, a lot of different testing stations. And some parts have the pump out boats and some parts don't. They were dubious about the ability to pull out a signal from that. So I was like, okay. One thing that didn't see was, well, if you want to test for this specifically, you need to be testing at the peak times where you think there is a problem.
Yeah.
But it's still so infrequent, and you see with these tests, it's like usually there's nothing. And so if you're trying to find something and it's only occasional, and it's going to be challenging. That's basically what they applied to me.
But do you think it's worth it to keep going with our Peconic River?
I definitely think that's a good idea. I think it's just, I think it's partially because it looks like DEC is really scaled back their testing.
Yeah.
And then we also don't have Daring Harbor at all. Without them,
Yeah.
there's nothing happening in Daring Harbor. So I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
But it may not give us information specific for the
Right. But other information.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think it's actually a really good idea because it's still infrequent. And so if you have a really infrequent issue, you test more and you actually see it when actually it ends up being a problem. I did reach out to the EPA as well. And I made contact with a person there who just came out. They finalized a final rule on vessel discharge zones. And they just came out in May. And so I reached out to the person who wrote that rule. And she just finished it. So she's actually going on vacation. But she did, I read your report she went and she said she's really interested. So I had a couple of questions that she's going to, when she gets back from vacation, look into that and come back. But so they have some ideas, and I thought, they're the people that would have some ideas about, hey, if you want to test for this issue, how would you go about it? So that's my
Just a couple of things, Matt, on that is the history with the WMAC on this issue. The number one is, Bill Garrity has been very hot on this particular issue, particularly in areas where there's a lot of rafting and people come on a Friday and leave on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And there's 7 or 8 boats tied up. Do our Bay constables go over and actually check, on that kind of situation because boats don't move.
Right.
So there are 4 people per boat. There are 28 people on these 7 or 8 boats. And there's a lot of activity, a lot of drinking and eating going on. So you would think that, do they have holding tanks that are capable of holding this kind of material? The other thing that you always alluded to was when they went to the marinas afterwards, the percentage of boats that had cut the Y valve, that was something, I don't want to quote the number because I thought the number was over 50%, but it was a high number, a shockingly high number. And that valve is what controls, regulates.
You mean they
discharge.
cut it meaning that they had it open and so
Correct.
direct flow out?
Yeah, just so that it wouldn't accumulate, that it would just be every time they flush, that would be it. So that was a little startling, when you get thousands and thousands of boats out here in the East End in the Peconics, and we're concerned about that. And the third thing I think we tried to convince, the WMAC did, is getting the Bay Constables to approach boats, to actually board boats and check on these things. And they honestly, they're very honest, they admitted they didn't do that. They were more preoccupied with people without life jackets and people that didn't have guides in the back when people were, water skiing and things like that, that were speeding. They didn't check on that. But I think now that we have Bo as part of the committee, so to speak, he's there all the time, or somebody from the Bay Constable is there. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, more closely. So those are the things that we were really trying to push on those that front.
And I know that they, some of the stuff I was looking at for this vessel discharge zone regulation, we talk about specific actions, so like actually wiring it shut, wiring that wire up in a certain location and sealing it. So that, only if you're offshore would you then clip that and use it. So you'd actually be able to go in and see if you have the seal or how you've done that locked and whatever like that. So I think that might be interesting.
I think that when you transit Lake Champlain, you can't even have a valve. I mean, I think they require you to go across Lake Champlain. I think there can't be an option of going over, overboard.
Right.
I think they're really strict up
That's
there.
right, yeah.
Anyway,
So Matt,
great.
my takeaway is, I mean, we did this originally to look at marine discharge, but it seems like we need to pay more attention to rain events and the runoff into the waters.
Yeah,
Concerned about that. You know, I mean, finding out what's in that, what we know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
step up our MS4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Program.
But
Plans to-
again, it's like, in terms of those levels aren't that high.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, did you notice, like, for instance, with the Daring Harbor locations, the Jack's, or the First Bridge location, definitely seems higher. You wonder if it's, not just sort of runoff, but like high runoff events, like, with downpour.
Yeah.
And, having lived at the base of the heights, past, there's a lot of runoff that comes down. And
Yeah.
those events, and it comes right all the way up from the church, goes all the way down, and right into, and when it's dumping rain, it's out. And
It also collects into the creek, and then the creek runs through the bridge into the harbor, and then it takes longer to flush. So you're gonna have not just the runoff from the heights, but everything around the creek too.
That's a pretty.
It's a
broad
large area.
Watershed that goes right.
Yeah.
Plus the areas that flush well and areas that don't flush well, Cockles seems to flush fairly well compared to the other harbors, that are more confined.
Great.
Okay, any other
Great.
questions for me?
Thanks so
Thank you very
much.
It's a lot of work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And then
Okay, next on the agenda, last week we spoke about beefing up the code enforcement section of the building department. We discussed turning it over to the town attorney, so the code enforcement goes through him. Stephen, you want to add anything to that, or?
I think the question.
I was just anxiously
Come on in.
awaiting.
Well, no, I just want to build up into it, justify it.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Subprime novel.
So I calculated that what we're going to need to put in the budget for this year is 31,200. So looking at whether there were any over or under budget categories that would be able to pull from or something that wasn't going to be utilized, I couldn't find anything at this point the year. So I'm recommending for tonight's meeting that we pull from the contingency. There's $10,836 left in contingent, so we'll pull that out, and then the rest, $20,364 comes from B fund balance. So that made me go look at where's our B fund balance, and so we don't have 2022 closed yet, so I pulled the 2021 analysis from the contract accountants had given us, and we had $1,084,000 at December 31st, 2021. So I rolled that forward with the preliminary 2022 numbers that we have, as well as what we have budgeted for appropriations and tax revenues and fees. So right now, I'm looking that we would close the year with almost 1.4 million in the B fund. So we have plenty there, and this seems like a worthwhile use of that.
Yeah.
And that fund balance has grown over the past few years because revenues, not that we've like saved on
Right.
expenditures, it's
Right.
because we've had more in building department fees.
And we go conservative with the anticipated.
Right, exactly. So when we get to budget season this year, let's use some of that and give it back to the taxpayers by not pulling as much tax revenues and pulling from the fund balance. Because we've asked, the outside auditors, the contract accountants, we've asked Association of Towns, the comptroller's office, like what's a good fund balance level to have? And they will not give us an answer.
It's not like the school where they're like.
Correct. So I think we should use some of that this year.
Yeah.
But for this, we're only pulling $20,364, so absorb that.
But also, given that the increase here is due to increased revenues, that means there's increased business. And I think come September, October, Reed, you're just going to have to do another analysis on your department. And are you staffed to where you need to be? And I think the assessors, we need to talk about that department too, because it's directly impacted.
Yeah.
So yes, but I do want to keep that in mind, that if this level of construction's going to keep up, these guys shouldn't always be running,
Right,
you know?
right, yes.
So,
Good point.
No, okay.
So we're gonna transfer that tonight?
Yeah, so I gave
Okay.
that information to Amber so she can
Thank you.
incorporate it into the resolution. Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda, we had a public hearing on the Ram Island, 149 Ram Island special permit application. It's a kind of a convoluted thing. There was CO questions and there's, after the fact, special permit questions. Where are we?
Correct. This was an quote-unquote illegally converted basement. And through that conversion, it bumped it over the SFLA requirement of 5,999 square feet. So there was no expansion of footprint. It was just internal conversion into living space. So they were given a notice of disapproval, that the total size with the basement was 9,260. And speaking to Reed and going over the plans, it's really 9,094 square feet total that they're gonna be asking for. And I know that the town board was concerned about, precedent and, rewarding bad behavior here, but this isn't the bad actor, so to speak, was the previous owner. This was sold to a new owner, and they've been working with the building department to try to legalize what's going on over there. So I just wanted to ask Reed to come up to explain how much the building permit fee will be. Says it's quite high, so you can see that there might be some deterrent effect going forward with that.
I think this is a perfect example of why we called for a moratorium, to try to get a feel for what we need to do going.
so to encourage people to do the right thing from the get-go.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Reed, you just want to come up and explain what the building permit fee would be and how you basically got to that?
Yeah, I mean, the policy has always been that if you have someone doing unpermitted work, the penalty is 5 times what the permit fee is a penalty. And this one was a big penalty. The penalty itself was $26,954.78 because the permit fee came out to $5,300.
That's the permit that they should have got,
That's
special,
that's special.
That's special,
That's just what the building permit fee would have been. And the building permit fee is progressive, so on a larger house, it's a higher estimated cost of construction. And it's based on, data that, and sort of a system that's promoted by, I'm trying to remember the acronym, the National Housing Association. And basically what it is, different size, smaller houses tend to have a lower per square foot, estimated cost of construction. So in effect, the permit fee is based on estimated cost of construction, which is then based on square footage of the work area multiplied by this, estimated fee, per square foot fee. So in this case, it was, the estimated cost of construction was $290 a square foot. It's 2,000, the basement that was converted was 2,754 square feet worked area. Not all of that is square foot living area, which was, I think, a confusion. It's the actual work area, though, including non-habitable space, was 2,754 square feet. And that gives you a permit fee. You then multiply it times, we charge $4.50 per 1,000 square feet per $1,000 of work. So it's 45 cents a square foot or something like that. No, it's not that. It's 0.045 square foot. So basically, it came out to a high permit fee, and then the penalty ended up being $26,954. The C of O fee is $150. So the total due for this work is $32,495.
Yeah, I just want to clarify for the record, building department fees are set by resolution by the town board. However, this fine, so to speak, or the fee that you have to pay for work done is in section 43-12D, and it just says where work for which a permit is required by this code is started or continued without a permit, said permit shall be obtained by payment not only of applicable permit fees, but of an additional administrative penalty fee equal to 5 times the amount of the building permit fees. So again, it's codified. It's not just a policy that's town code.
Stephen, just out of curiosity, on a sale of a building where there's obviously a blatant problem here with permitting, is there any legal stance that the new owner can go just even past, a year or so with the person that's old, or are they dead in the water? This is something
I
that,
wouldn't be able to comment on that.
okay, all right,
But it may be.
okay. It was just interesting how the law
Yeah.
goes, but I think the message, one of the things, you hate to use anybody as a scapegoat or anything else like that, but this is an ongoing problem, maybe not to this magnitude, but it is an ongoing problem that people have to address moving forward. And you hate to make
But if it's in the law that this is the remediation or the,
yeah,
you
because if the penalties aren't strong enough, then people are figuring out, well, hey, listen, it's worth my while to pick up an extra 3,000 square feet of house, for a slap on the wrist, that's not a big deal. People have to abide by the law. And it's pretty clear, you got to start doing things the right way. And we have to make sure that people do things the right way.
And just to dovetail on this, the town board is considering an updated CO procedure that could help in this. I know it's really, the burden is on the purchaser to get the updated CO. But again, if the realtors and the attorneys are educated on this, they'll ensure that it's part of the contract that this property will be able to get an updated CO and or apply for it prior to closing and procure that updated CO. Because if we do have it, it'll be 30 days from the transfer, but you could make it part of the contract to have that done prior thereto.
So is there any choice in the matter of the new owner? Can they, and just for public consumption here, to rip out all the things in the basement? Could you technically do that? I don't know if you'd want to do that, but you do have that option.
Yes.
And therefore you would be stuck with this kind of a fee.
Yep.
All right.
I have a number of concerns. The first one, Meg, going to your suggestion that we start studying how we're gonna do this going forward, total square footage. Would this come into that then?
It depends on
What the original,
no, so that, all right, yeah. So my suggestion would avoid this from happening.
right,
Because when you do the original construction of the home, the entire square footage is what you'd be permitting,
Right.
not just the finished livable space. So it wouldn't leave the option of now finishing a basement without the permit for the additional square footage, because you've already permitted the entire square footage of that structure. You may have to go and get a special permit for an additional structure, but it would avoid this from happening. So then, if you have the entire square footage permitted, then you would go and get a building permit to finish something, but you wouldn't have to go back through a special permit application because that would have been your original application.
If I may, yeah, what she's proposing would preclude this kind of situation, because specifically what happened here, because I know from talking to the contractor, is that they said, we're not going for a special permit, the previous owners.
Yeah.
We're not going for a special permit. We'll get the permit for the 2 floors. The next week, they contacted the contractor and had him, and he swears they told him that they had gotten the permit. But the next week after they got the C of O, he started work on the basement. So they got like 14 years or whatever it was
Right.
of use of that basement without having to go for a special permit.
Okay.
So this would eliminate that problem.
And it should also be noted in this particular case that they upgraded the sanitary system.
yeah.
And has a new IA system.
Okay, next concern. It sounds like a lot of money, $32,500 for a fine.
Like a bathroom renovation.
If you talk- yeah. And likewise, if you're talking a sale of a, $8 million house, it's not a whole lot of money. So how do we prevent everybody from doing it and just saying, well, I'll pay the fine? It's peanuts compared to,
We're never going to eliminate it entirely. There's,
And through enforcement, on a case-by-case determination, there's different tools you can avail yourself of. One is a Supreme Court action where you can ultimately compel them to rip out the illegal structure. So, but I'm thinking if we can bolster our code enforcement and get out in front of it, then, we might be able to resolve it.
And two things, I mean, this one, it's a new owner, which my thinking initially was making it out.
yeah.
But because it is a different owner, being kinder, but we need to take that kind of stance. We also should be going after the contractors.
Yes.
And bringing them up before the.
We have to reconstitute that board.
Yeah.
No response, I guess, to our ad, but
Yes.
we got one.
One applicant, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we need to start going after contractors, so then they are forced to it's on me too, to make sure.
How is that legally, that the contractor should be responsible for the permit or the homeowner is responsible?
I think we could go for both, because people will shop contractors. I know contractors who've said no to work,
Right.
and they just find somebody else.
Right.
that's very common.
It's ultimately the responsibility of the homeowner, but builders act as agent for the homeowner.
Right.
They're the ones who are skilled and schooled in this and should know when a building permit should not be necessary. And I think we need to bolster that committee and take some action against unscrupulous builders.
When the couple came here 4 months ago, it was in the dead of winter, they were moving for a great distance coming to Shelter Island here. They were kicking themselves, saying, why didn't we do this and why we didn't do that? I wish we would have done this and wish we would have done that. They were not hiding from the responsibility. They were saying,
How do we make it right?
how do we make it right? And I understand the position that the town is in, they were, I don't want to say embarrassed, but they're both very well-educated people that said, in the hustle and bustle of life, when you're doing these things like that, we did not look into the details where we should have and made sure that these things before the sale actually happened. And they,
I think-
they were, were you here that night?
Yes.
They were not very defensive kind of, they were taking.
I think that they were acting
Yeah.
good faith. I think that
They were.
I think sometimes people involved with a sale will downplay the extent of possible cost and liability in a situation like this, and will portray it as, oh, it's a slam dunk, you just go and resolve it, and it's not a big thing. I think to a certain extent, that's what happened to that property, is it 8 Margaret's, Goodson,
Yeah.
where, you never know, because, it's he said, it's he said, she said.
Yeah.
But I think he was led to believe by the agents involved that it would not be a big deal to resolve it, and turns out it is a big deal.
Well, it's sort of like when you buy a used car, it only needs a good cleaning.
Right.
Why didn't you clean it? Guys should be, as the buyer, this should be your question, if that's all it needs.
Well, that's why I mean,
No.
whatever we can do to get that CO updated earlier in the process, whether it's an active campaign to alert, people involved with a sale that this is something that needs to be done one way or another, so, you know, so that the onus is less and less on the buyer and the seller, because they're the ones that ultimately that did the illegal work, and it's important to hold their feet to the fire, not that.
Are there lessons to be learned from the local real estate people here too, that, you know, representing both sides? You know, the buyer and the seller, and we need to make sure that these kinds of situations, they're made aware of them, you know, so that they can step in, and they can be, you know, they can head these things off before they end up coming to this.
I mean, I think that somehow or another, the buyer's side has to be made aware of the requirement for the new CMO if we do this. Not find out at the closing and not find out after. They're gonna have to do this. I mean, because then, as Stephen said, then they can make it a condition, you know, make the inspection a condition of the closing. That way the onus isn't on the town, they, you know, make the.
Just a question came up, that if you have a pre-existing non-conforming house, old house from the 1800s, and you have to get an updated CO, when you're looking at it through the lens of the property maintenance code, right? To give an updated CO and make sure that, you know, the life safety is, protected, and then also that they have the requisite, COs for certain, like a garage conversion or basement conversion or a new building on site.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we do a couple things. One is there's a section, I don't want to bore everybody, but, you know, if you build a house, that house is only required to be code compliant for the code at the time of the construction of the house, except for certain items that are in the property maintenance code. And certain life safety issues are part of the property maintenance code, and those are the ones that we really go after. We don't worry too much about whether the weeds are too tall or something like that, but we're concerned with smoke and CO detectors, cool gates, things that are, that are life safety issues. So we look for that, and we look to see if any work was done, you know, any illegal conversions of space or things like that since the last approvals. That's basically it.
So you wouldn't make like a home from the 1800s, change all the insulation to
No, you can't do
energy
that.
efficiency standards of today?
That's specifically illegal.
Okay.
According to New York State.
Okay, so my last big concern is we're going to adopt the moratorium tonight. We have 3 or 4 outstanding applicants, and if we pass this one, don't pass the other 3, I think it's not right.
I see a big difference.
I would say there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Distinguishable.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a structure.
Pre-existing structure, it's already constructed, there's no expansion of the footprint. They've already, it's not a
Septic.
brand new construction on a vacant lot like a lot of these other applications are, or a complete tear down and rebuild, which a lot of them are. So I would say this is unique in that it's not actually changing the landscape at all. It doesn't have any impact.
Legalizing what exists.
Right.
And a moratorium would leave them in sort of a weird limbo, because they would have a house with a basement that they couldn't use, and it also would hold up their C of O. This is a house that without a valid C of O technically is not habitable.
Yeah.
And the major reason for the law, I'm surmising, is the bulk of the house, the exterior, what you see, what the character of the community. What happens on the ground in the basement, probably is not. And I know, like, SFLA doesn't count unfinished basements, so the mass on the ground is still there, that you're allowed to have it as big as you want. But the way that, since when you finish it, that, adds towards your SFLA. But again, the major concern, I think at the time, and because I'm using this based on my understanding of other different municipalities, is that it's really what is on the exterior, what you can see with the eye and the bulk. And the mass, and the mass.
the effects on the aquifer.
Well, you could also make the argument that this is a house that was occupied in this fashion for, I can't remember if it's 14 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And now they've gone ahead and put in, and they're only adding one bedroom in the basement, this area. So it's not a huge, it's not a dramatic.
Put in the IA
increase.
system.
And they put in the IA system, which works for the whole house, which I would say is a fair balance for adding one.
Yeah, I have to say, if this was an addition, up the back of the house, that I would look at it differently. I would, because it's a footprint, it might be an encroachment, it might, a whole bunch of reasons. Site plan development, all of that would have been required. This is not that. I think its enclosure is important to me in terms of making it different, for the purposes of this proposed moratorium.
I'm starting to, I was thinking we shouldn't act on anything, but I'm starting to understand the difference.
Yeah, I do see there's a definite difference between the two. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll act on that tonight.
Thanks, Reed.
Thank you, Reed.
Thank you, Reed.
Next on the agenda is the outdoor assembly permit. We have actually two applicants here, but before we do that, Meg, you want to walk us through what's
Sure.
what we do?
Yeah, so starting last year, when I first got on the board, I was voluntold to do the outdoor assembly application permits and just review them and for completeness, et
I
cetera.
love that word. That's the first one I've heard.
Yeah, I learned that when I was married to someone in the Navy.
I was directed to.
So what we realized is that we're getting a lot of outdoor assembly applications asking for relief from the noise ordinance, but there was no real mechanism in the code to address those requests in the outdoor assembly applications, and there was no application specifically for an exemption from noise ordinance. So what we did was we kind of tried to clean up the code and make it very simple for someone looking at it to see if they needed an outdoor assembly application. And we added a little blurb saying that if you're doing an outdoor assembly application and you're requesting noise, then you apply here, because it didn't exist previously. So the original code has all the stipulations in this long, drawn-out, kind of wordy, confusing paragraph, and it doesn't address noise. So what we did is we simplified it and streamlined it. So now it lists all the things. So an outdoor assembly permit shall be required to conduct the following, whether on public or private property or on town waters. So organizing a race, an adult or children's race, circus, carnival, tent show, music performance, fireworks display, or any event utilizing town services within the town of Shelter Island, excluding the village of Deering Harbor. And any event to be held at a town beach, park, or facility which involves the erection of a dance floor, arch, tent greater than 100 square feet, fence or other structure, or is a venue for a private concert, show, or dance, or any event requiring a noise exemption pursuant to Town Code 92-6. So now it includes people requesting noise exemption. So even if you're having an event on your own property, like, how Sylvester Manor or the Historical Society have events, but they want a noise exemption, then now they have a mechanism to request that. So, that's kind of the simple change we made, was just cleaning it up so it's easy to read and adding that noise exemption.
It was verbal diarrhea. Not verbal. Written diarrhea.
So it just makes it simpler for the applicants to understand that it's required for them. And then we also worked on kind of the internal process of the town, how we vet the applications to make sure they're complete, so that we have all worked out. And we have a calendar that we use now. So every time we receive applications, we put them on the calendar so we can see if they're overlapping. And we can also make sure that rain dates overlap, so that we don't end up with multiple events in a similar area on the same day.
Yeah.
So we've got a good system going.
Nice.
Very good.
Thanks.
Cheap queen.
No problem.
Okay, so we heard from Tom Harshagen. We have the Historical Society here now to talk about their event. And again, basically it has to do with the exemption from the noise. And then you want to come up?
2 events, right?
We have 2 events.
2 events, yes.
2 events. Thank you.
Hi, Nanette.
Would you like me to tell you about this event?
Well, give us start with the dates. What dates are they?
July 20th to 23rd is our 3rd annual musical, directed and coordinated by Lisa Shaw. We did apply for a permit. This is an important fundraiser for us. I believe our stage permit's already been approved. The noise exemption, we did check off that little box. Noise should be over early because the play runs 6 o'clock. So usually we're trying to be done by 10 in terms of getting people out of there.
What was the second date, the second,
It's July 20th to 20th.
oh, the second event?
Oh, that's.
The dance party.
Yeah. Because they're kind of tied in together, I just need to.
We want to do a duet? Sure. No, we like to do that.
So the second date is the 70s dance, and it'll be July 30th.
July 30th?
July 30th.
July 29th.
Oh, 29th.
July
sorry.
29th.
And rain date was.
Yeah, so this is where I had some questions because between the musical and the dance party and all of the rain dates, there's a lot of overlapping. So I was wondering if maybe you could pick one rain date for the musical, because right now we have 4 rain dates for the musical. Because the problem is like some of your rain dates for the musical overlap with the same dates for the dance party. So
Well,
you know, I don't know how many rain dates you think
we
you
only have
need.
2 rain dates for the play. Even though the play runs 3 days, if we had rain all 3 days, that would be a problem. But we chose to just move it to the following weekend and hopefully pick one of these 2 days.
So
I see what
either
you're
the-
saying.
Either the 29th or the 30th? But if you have the dance party on the 29th, so then should we just do the 30th for
Yes.
the musical or?
Let's do the 30th for the musical and do our dance for all the dates.
Okay. Yeah, because that was just kind of my concern, looking at the calendar, because I had it all mapped out, and I was trying to figure out what would happen if we did get multiple days of rain. You know,
July.
so we're gonna make the rain date for the musical
On the 30th.
on the 30th, okay, not the 27th, 28th.
Correct.
Okay. And so do you have a rain date for the dance party, if that's the case?
Well, that's also the 30th.
Okay. You can't really have both on the same night, can you?
That, because the play goes till.
Well, the play goes to 8, and then we also have our acting lab in between. It's a youth program.
We'll say the following weekend?
Do we have to answer this question?
You don't have to answer it right now, but you can sort it out and let us know, yeah.
Usually we like to be very respectful of other
Yes.
events going on. Yeah, really hope for no rain. Lucky.
Yeah.
That's all we use.
I just want to make sure you don't end up with a situation where all of a sudden you have 3 events scheduled, like.
I appreciate that. I had not noticed that, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, when I started mapping it out on the calendar, I was like, oh, this could get complicated. So definitely think about that and let us know what you would want to do for a rain date.
And I guess the better news for the dance is that it is under a tent.
Right,
Yeah, so
A
we
little
can,
bit of
right.
wiggle room there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sides.
Yeah, unless it was box.
Right. Hey, that could be fun.
It's the 70s, right?
Yeah, I mean, dancing in the rain. I just love dancing in the rain.
Hey, Chief, I see you're on. Do you have any questions about this?
No, Meg has covered most of the concerns we had about duplications of date and probably not the need for multiple rain dates. So let them sort it out. We'll review it. Noise wise, I don't see that being an issue. So
Right.
I don't
We
think
notified the neighbors and invited them as well, so.
it's good.
Okay, all right, so you guys will just coordinate on the dates.
Yep, we'll get back to you quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you all join us. Yeah.
Yes,
Without
thanks, guys.
rain. No rain.
Okay, next on the agenda is business on town property. This is an interesting one. It's not really town property, but Rob, come on up and explain what you'd like to do.
Okay. Howdy. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
So, the Chamber of Commerce wants to bring the Hampton Hopper onto the island. If you're not familiar with the Hampton Hopper, it's a minibus, a 25-person minibus. There are several of them on the south side, and they run all over the place. So I have a little presentation here. I'll take you through this. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've been kicking this idea around for a long time, and basically our mission statement is to bring business to our members and to Shelter Island. So in doing so, in analyzing why or how we could get more people here, one of the things is that if we made it easier for people to get here and easier to get around the island, it would increase business for our members. So how do we do that? Well, the Hampton Hopper, next slide, please. So, yeah. Okay. So the Hampton Hopper has been functioning in the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton for the last 10 years. And they have a proven track record of moving people around safely and efficiently, and it's all free. So obviously somebody has to pay for it. This would be coming from the Chamber of Commerce. We're not looking for any money from the town. We just want to give everybody a heads up to pursue this. The bus would run for free. You can hop on and hop off at all the different locations. It'll cut down, hopefully, on traffic, people coming over from both sides, primarily from Greenport, with cars and stuff on the island. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing it. Next slide, please. So if we decide to go ahead with this, and then we haven't really even secured the funding for this yet, but we're just kind of cover our bases in advance of this to identify any potential issues. But this is what we have planned. This is the proposed route. It's going to run for, I think, 9 or 10 Saturdays and Sundays through the summer, only on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. It'll be a 1-hour loop through the island, stopping at different places. And if you guys see this on your computers. Okay, so this is the proposed route. I ran this route with Rob in the bus a month ago, and it takes just about an hour. Of course, we may change the route a little bit depending on what the ridership is and where things are, but basically it's going to start, well, you can read this. I don't have to read this. There's a map on the next page of the proposed route, and you can see it basically covers most of the island. And our hope is that people that are here for the summer, when the bus goes by, they can hop on, take it to the IGA, do their shopping, and then pick it up again when it comes back past the IGA and get to their house. It'll also alleviate, hopefully, some parking issues down at the beach, because if people can just hop on the bus from where they are, if it goes past their house from the route, then they won't have to park down at the beach. They can just do that. So it's
Gerard, you can hop on, you don't have to be at a bus stop.
There are designated spots, but they said that if, there's a spot where somebody's waiting and it's safe and legal to pull over, then they will.
Okay.
But generally speaking, there's going to be, if we decide to go forward with this, there'll be certain stops. We'll post the route, and people know that. On the next, and also the reason that we have this route is so that all of our brick and mortar members have access to it. And the people that I've spoke to, and I've been very careful not to really spread the word about this. This is the first public information session about this. But some of the members that I've spoken with, they're very excited about it because it works. It'll work for them. If you take a look at the route schedule, you see we're starting at 11 a.m. On Saturday and Sunday mornings if we go ahead and get the funding. And the last trip, the hopper will end up at the South Ferry at 8 p.m. There's an hour gap in there where the driver has to have some DOT required downtime. So the bus will not run for that hour, but it'll take people, imagine you're coming off of Greenport and you want to go to Mishamik. You just wait for the hopper, it'll take you there. You don't have to bring your car over. So it'll cut down on traffic on the island, hopefully, which will make it safer for bikers and everything else. The next slide is, so we'll be getting data from them. about how the ridership goes. This is a sample from Montauk, and you can see the numbers that are there. So it's substantial. And then this is just down in downtown Montauk, and what they call the Montauk Loop. Okay, next one, please. Right. So we have to find funding for the 11 weekends, and we'll be taking care of that, hopefully through sponsorships from our members. If necessary, we'll apply for some grants. And we're not looking to the town, but if it turns out that it's a good thing and the ridership is up, the town would like to be involved with it down the line after the initial year or so have gone by, we'd love to partner with you. But we're not looking for anything from the town except, and that's the other thing. I'm not really sure why we need approval, but we'd like to have it if we need it. And again, there's no donations, there's no money transacted for the ridership except between for the contract that we have with Hampton Hopper. And Hampton Hopper carries all the insurance. Rob said that they would be more than happy to name the town as well as the Chamber of Commerce as additional insured. So we have that angle covered. And that's just it. I hope you guys give us the thumbs up.
Have you talked to South Ferry? Just that there might be increased parking down there, and do they have?
Well, there's parking on the other side. It's really limited. And I really,
they own that.
yeah, I haven't spoken to them yet because again, we haven't really worked through all this.
Right.
We don't know if it's going to, and really, I think if somebody's coming over from the south side, I think they're probably going to drive over.
Yeah, I wonder if you'll cut out South Ferry eventually. I don't know.
Well, that was one of the things that we had discussed with Rob, is modifying the route based on usage.
As you go.
Yes.
So, because then is Cockles Harbor just not a member of the chamber, the marina?
It's not on there, but we're gonna.
Are you going, because I know that they used to have a ban. I don't know if they still do.
I don't know either.
And Shell Beach is the other place I was thinking, where the anchorage is. People, just as another thought. I don't know how many.
That one, that's a tough one because that's like at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It was hard enough to get the route to work in an hour going out to Ram Island, to the Ram's Head. But again, and it's all very fluid. It's going to be how we do, but.
Also, if I may say, in regard to Shell Beach, in regard to Shell Beach, we are trying to support our members. There is no business out there. We're not really doing this to try and bring tourists to the beaches. We're trying to really do things to support our members.
Yeah.
And because you can, as a resident, if you're on the route and you put your hand out and the driver believes it's a safe place to stop, you can pick up the rest.
Right.
So that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it is supported by the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton. They all support it, but we're not looking to ask the town of Shelter Island at this point to put anything in. We're going to really try and use grants and our membership to support it.
Have you thought about extending into the evening a little bit more to support restaurants?
Well, so again, this is just a nascent proposal. We have to see, first of all, if we're going to get the funding from our members. But that's an additional cost because then we're looking at other drivers because a driver apparently can only do 8 hours or whatever it is. So there are certain restrictions that we need to talk about if we move forward.
Right. And also, one of our members has a taxi service on the island, and one of his busiest times is taking people to and from restaurants. So while this may take some people in the evening to a restaurant, we're not trying to put him out of business. We're trying to allow him to do his busy work and really just get people moving around that would not be part of his operation.
Yes, that makes sense.
So Stephen, technically it doesn't need a town permit. Well, I know we have some, go ahead.
All right, so yes, it is arguable. However, 36-14.2 is commerce on town property. It states no person shall solicit or engage in any business, trade, or commercial transaction on a town beach or park or on streets within 500 feet of the boundary of any town beach, landing, or park. So if you look at their loop, they're gonna stop at South Rim Island at Club Drive, the Cheekwood, West Neck Guest House, Sunset Beach Hotel, Perlman Music Program, Perlman Hotel, Wade's Beach. So arguably, they're within 500 feet of the boundary of beaches and or parks. And since it's a set loop with set times and it's always, and this stops, I would say that to be on the safe side, we require a permit here.
That was you kind of led into my question, actually. Let's say, you start doing it and you see, well, it doesn't make sense, we're doing it this way. Are they, if we approve it, are they limited to what they present right now, or can they change?
As far as the loop?
Yeah.
We can write it, and now if we just say a general loop. I don't know, again, this is sort of a.
I think it's a trial period, so,
So I could always amend it if they want to change the loop, or write it in a way that's general enough.
Doesn't fix
that's
to that path.
Right, yeah.
A supply.
my next question on that was, are you committed to all 9 weeks? Just say, for instance, that devil's advocate, you're going along, after the first 4 weeks, the ridership is very sparse. Are you committed to the next 5 weeks?
We haven't written a contract yet, so I don't know.
All right.
But
Because I'm just thinking about the people, the business people that are laying money out, before.
Well, that has to go into.
Right, in general business though, if you're going to start something,
Yeah.
you don't want to start it and stop it. You really have to give it the time. I think
Right,
that
okay.
we would give it the full year,
Okay.
the full 9
Yep,
weeks,
right.
to see whether in fact it makes sense or not. If it doesn't make sense, it won't come back next year.
Right.
If it looks like it's gonna make sense, we'll bring it back. We may modify its route then, or its
That's
timing,
logical.
whatever, but,
Okay, thank you.
And then my other question is just, it's gonna stay the small bus, right?
No,
Is it a
nothing
large
bigger.
bus?
That's
Okay,
it.
I was like, a
No,
large
that's
bus is a little much,
That's it.
but.
And it'll be, it would be a great problem for us to have
Right.
and solve if we
Right.
needed a bigger bus, but this is, what you see here is our proposal that we're gonna make to our members in a couple of days, and nothing's gonna change.
So if it does grow, it'd just be another hopper.
Not this year,
No, I'm saying in the future.
Yes.
It'll never be a big bus, it'll just be.
never be,
additional hopper.
no, just the little buses, because that's what they're famous for.
Right.
Albert, right.
Chief, you have any questions, concerns?
No, not at all. I think that we can, as a municipality, work with them on this venture. I would just ask the town attorney when he writes the permit, that he gives us the flexibility to adjust the pick up and drop off locations based on traffic and public safety. Let them choose the locations, but we may adjust it by, let's just say 100 feet or so, because it's in a bad spot. And we have no problem. We're pretty flexible that way with working with them on that. So there would be some parameter that the police department or highway department would have that flexibility in the overall plan.
Stella, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks so much. To that end, what Jim just said is the question about the proposed stop by the Cheekwit. That is a bit of a choke point where the road really narrows. So I think we'd have to be really careful about that. The other question that I have has to do with the New York Avenue. I just want to make sure that the bus is not over the weight requirement, because there's a restriction on trucks on New York Avenue. And then the third question would be, if this goes forward and the town's named an additional insured, being some of this is on Heights-owned roads, we'd like probably the Heights to be named as well, please.
Sure, I don't think that would be an issue.
Any of that?
Thank you.
Right.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right.
Thank you, good luck.
Yep, thank you for your time.
Sounds clear to me.
Okay. All right, that's it on the agenda. We'll go around the table. Meg, you want to start us off?
Sure. We had a comp plan meeting last night, working on the environment chapter, and we will have another meeting on Monday, the 22nd at 6:30. We're going to continue work on the environment chapter, and if we finish that, move on to housing. So we're moving along with that. What else did I have last week?
We'll come back to you.
I think that's it. No, I mean, I think that's,
I think on the comp plan, I'd like to say, I would really like to request of people who speak to us, to the committee, to watch their tone just a touch.
Yeah, it was a little embarrassing.
A little embarrassing, you know, I mean, all right, you don't respect us, you don't respect the process, do your best to hide that.
Yeah.
It's the end of a long day.
well, I think also it's important that people remember that this is the roughest of first drafts.
Right.
You know, and we have a consultant on board now, so our goal is to make sure that the action items and the projects that we want to carry forward for the town have been discussed by the group, and we have some consensus on what we're putting into there before we give it to the consultants so that they can rearrange the chapters, fix the chapters, confirm the data in the chapters. We just want to make sure that the vision is coming from the island and not coming from the consultants down. And that was the big criticism we got in the beginning with the consultants, was that it was consultant driven and they didn't have a voice of the island. So, you know, we're putting in a lot of effort to make sure that it's coming from island-driven documents, so that we're looking at, you know, reports completed by the different committees, and that's where we're pulling the information to put in the chapters. We're making sure that, you know, we've gotten information from the building department, from the assessor's office, and that we're using our general knowledge of the island, and, you know, a lot of us growing up here and living here, and we're putting that into the chapters, and we're letting that kind of drive where it goes, as opposed to having, you know, the outside consultant say, well, this is what we always put in a comp plan. So right now, we are working on the roughest of drafts, and if anyone watched the meeting last night, there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't make it, gets cut out because we don't agree. And so, or it gets modified.
I think last night was a good example of, we got a lot done. There were a lot of action points there, and Lily especially had done some work pulling in things that she thought should be there, or at least should be discussed. But everybody's pretty darn familiar with the material at this point, and that sits around this table. So we do move in a nice clip. I mean, we do have a good discussion, I believe. You know, there are some points that we really have to hammer out, and we do that. But there are some points where I think everybody's like, oh no, that's already been done, or, you know, fill in the blank. But I think the way this committee is operating, or did yesterday anyway, it just shows that they have put the time in, and they know what the topics are, and they kind of are familiar. So I thought of last night was pretty good. So I was kind of surprised when we were, you know, when I sort of objected to the approach, to the tone, because you know, I think it's just an objection to the whole idea of a comp plan by this administration. But
I think what impressed me the most was that the consultants just sat back and listened.
Yeah.
They didn't get involved.
Always, yeah, they're just hearing it. And their first effort at roughing up our rough draft will be here in about a week, we hope. And I think that'll be significant. I mean, it'll be, we'll know.
Chapters that we've already kind of been like, this is a good draft, you know, from the committee. So it'll be all the things that we've already discussed, already have consensus on as a group. And so these last few chapters are complicated chapters, which is why they ended up at the end.
Right.
It's not a rush, it just happens to be the timing. And it also, these are the chapters that we're going to want consultants to weigh in on. And if we have comments or questions, we want to be able to bounce it off of them. So, you know, I think that moving forward, and the fact that we have 2 meetings a month now as opposed to 1 meeting a month helps kind of keep it fresh in our minds, and it keeps people on task. And so, you know, I think it's a good start, so that the consultants have all the information they need from us to do their job, which is compile a document that's user-friendly, understandable, and makes sense, and shows a picture of what we're really looking for. And, you know, I think the task force and the committee, we've tried to do that with our drafts, and we're not professional comp plan writers. So of course it's going to look a little rough, and we expect it to be, but we want to make sure that it has the right spirit and energy moving forward, and that it is kind of capturing what we as an island
feel.
Yeah.
As opposed to, having it put on us from a outside force. So I think it's moving forward well, and I think we've got a lot of good input, and I think that I'm looking forward to seeing what the consultants come back with, and then really presenting that to the public when it's in a draft that makes sense, and then having them comment. I think that's going to be a real litmus test.
Yeah.
Because right now, we have all the information on the website. It's a lot of information, and I know it's going to get pared down significantly, and it's going to be made so that it's more understandable.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all the input that we're getting at this level, but I do know that it's going to change. And so I'd really love for people to see the next draft. I think that's going to be what really matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Meg,
Yeah.
the zoning chapter, what's the date again for that?
So we're looking at June 12th.
Okay, because I think the consultants should be charged with big homes, large homes.
Yeah, I've actually already told them that.
Yeah, okay, and
Let them know that that's a concern.
Yeah, and if they're not in the housing plan.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you have to
they can
cover it.
evaluate that, just so then, obviously, the comp plan won't be adopted, but at least we'd have some information that the town board could kick around in the short term.
Yep.
So we could hit the ground running when and if we do amend the code regarding large homes, so we can make more efficient use of the time.
Even I think it's important to remind everybody that, as Meg said, the comp plans are, what we want the island to be in the future, how we're gonna do it. It's not specific, we're gonna do this, and this. These are the areas we're gonna address.
Right.
This is what, that's.
It guides you. It doesn't tell
Exactly.
you exactly what the code's.
So I guess I'm gonna get the impression that, some people on the committee want more.
Right, oh, yeah,
More specific, and that's not really what the charge is.
exactly, we go always over, actually quite often, the idea that it is not the job of the comp plan to
Right legislation.
write legislation or create data. Generate data, I should say. It's either you use the data that's available, or you say, town government, this data is needed. Please commission a study and determine whether or not this idea is necessary. So, that's how it works. That's how it works. And again, we sort of get hammered on a fairly regular basis that we do have it. I believe we have plenty of data, probably too much in some of these chapters that can be pushed to an appendix. And if you're interested as a reader, you go look for the appendix.
Sure.
Well, and yesterday we did have a few comments where, some people of the committee felt that the action item was too specific. It should be more broad, to
Yes.
allow for more research and, looking into all the options.
More
And I
eventualities,
think
yeah.
that's correct. I
Yes.
do think that we shouldn't have specific action items, like, increase dog usage of water fountains by 10%. There should be very, very broad general
Right.
goals with maybe potential paths to follow, like things to look at and consider when you're taking this larger item into,
Yeah.
thought. But we're working on it.
There you go.
And the consultants will be very good at hashing all that out and fleshing it out.
When will we meet with the consultants?
Never, no. Not letting you anywhere near them, no. There is we have it, I don't have they gave us a timeline. I think that the first meeting with the town board might be in
June?
late June, after we have pretty much every chapter in rough draft. That might be a little ambitious, it might be July, but
Okay.
yeah.
Because we want to start having big public meetings in
Yes.
July. We want to make sure that July and August and September is a lot of public input and feedback. So, that's the plan.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, my only comment is, ladies, the two of you, a marvelous job. So far, just, and very, the most difficult task in my 8 years being on this town board is taking on this comprehensive plan. It's a very, very tough assignment. My only comment as the person that we love to hear the differences of opinion. Tone is so important, being respectful is so important. Because if you really want to be heard and really listen to, the more you embrace civility and good conversation, keeping it neat and clean, the better it's going to be received by far. It's just human nature. So we want to remind everybody that I get there's a lot at stake here with the comprehensive plan, but we can do this together if we maintain the kind of communication that's needed to get this done. So I applaud you for, and sometimes you really have to bite it, and it is tough at the end of a long day when you've been here for meeting after meeting after meeting, and now you're taking on another 2.5 hour meeting. So, and thank you to all the public that have participated in this. Couldn't do it without you. I have 3 quick reports. Mashonack Preserve on this past Saturday on May 13th conducted at the Manor House a 10 o'clock to 11:30 community listening session, building partnerships, because that's what it's about. I started my remarks after they made their presentation by saying, pendulum is swinging back to the way I knew it when I first moved here in 2007. It's coming back to Shelter Island, and it's getting a little bit away from where it had been. And I think it's a very healthy thing. And I think for the people who were there, and there were probably 15, 18 community members that were there for this, the input was tremendous. Cody Miller, who is the Conservation Steward Manager for Mashonack, led the way with her opening remarks. And then Cindy Belt, who's the Education and Outreach Coordinator, along with Becca Kusa, who's the Outreach Program Coordinator. The two of them did a nice overhead presentation. Doug introduced himself, Malomo, and Dan Ritzler. And Dan, by the way, how do you take care of, I try to take care of an acre. It's care of 2,039 acres. The road going into Mashonack has never, ever been better.
Really?
The meadows have never been in better shape. The trails have never been in better shape. So hats off to Dan. He does a great job. And there's not a nicer person in the world than Debbie Palomo, who is the guest relationship. She matches up that job very well. Clarissa, by the way, is retired. That's my fault for putting her up there. She recently retired. And a couple of the seasonal people on the bottom have changed. I'll update that and give you the new names of those people. And of course, the place would not operate without Rebecca Mundy, who's the operations manager, who's been there for, decades, literally, working with the Mashonack people under different leadership. So it was great. Also present was the New York and Long Island TNC Chiefs of Staff. So they were represented. The first thing they both had to say was, we're not selling Mashonack. By the way, all these rumors that are out there, we would never, ever, ever entertain selling this place. Just sharing that with the audience and with my colleagues, but they brought it up and I'm repeating it. The expectations are established for 2030 TNC goals. It's a global effort aimed at environmental and conservation efforts. Mashonack has been in operation now for 43 years, being shaped by our local community and getting back to basics. That's the theme, getting back to basics, what works, and community engagement. So I think that's something that they really embraced. Here's just a list of the things. So the staff introduced themselves. Cindy and Becca gave the visual presentation. And here are some of the new initiatives in the last couple of years. Expanded parking lot. You've been down there, significantly larger. Getting rid of the cars off of 114 and getting them in a parking lot for safety reasons. 2 electric vehicles, 2 recharging stations at the Manor House, 2 at the visitor center as well. So there are 4 recharging stations there. Expanded hours. For years and years and decades, it ran from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In the wintertime, it was 4 p.m. And now it goes from sunrise to sunset. Place is open. And that was introduced during COVID. And they loved it. People raved about the opportunity of getting in there at 6 o'clock in the morning. Birders and people want to get out there with their cameras early in the morning. And people on a hot day, a late afternoon walk through Mashonack at 6 o'clock. They still can do a couple of the trails. New trails. There's a new coastal trail. We had to modify the red trail due to sea rise. That little bridge, that little wood platform that used to go across near Annie's Creek, that's underwater and that's no longer. So that trailer has been redone. There is a new teaching pavilion at the visitor center. So if you pull into the parking lot, you will see a huge overhang with concrete floor with pillars where we have now a teaching station for the kids. So during inclement weather, or if it's real hot, you want to get them out of direct sunlight, it'll be a perfect place for teaching. A new bilingual book nook, both in English and Spanish in the visitor center, trying to make ourselves a little bit more open to the Hispanic population here on the island and people who visit from out off the island. New septic upgrades at the Manor House and all the surrounding buildings. Everybody is on an IA system out there. Stewardship work, rotating mowing of the meadows. The meadows have never looked better, really starting to look like meadows. It's one of the most lost habitats in the United States. Conservation work, as I shared with you, the comment from Mike and Mike about the regeneration of the forest. Now that the deer herd is down in Neshomic, it's the only place on the island that has showed a dramatic decrease in deer. The forest is responding very, very nicely. Annual leaf cleanup they just conducted. They're back to bluebird, tree swallow, purple martin monitoring has returned. They do also work with the Thynet Foundation and veterans programs for veterans. Number 13, the Environmental Explorers Summer Programs. It used to be called the Environmental Ed Program. It is now Explorer Summer Programs, Environmental Explorers. There are 3 sessions of 4 days, Monday through Thursday. They are listed July 10th through 13th, July 31st through August 3rd, and August 14th through 17th. And this is for ages 8 through 12, grades 3 through 7. That's for effective September 2023, those grade levels. There is, of course, $350. There are scholarship offerings for people that can't afford that kind of money, full scholarship, part scholarships for that. 14, there's a return to many of the special events. We will be returning to the May celebration on Memorial Day weekend on Sunday, May 28th from 4 to 6 o'clock. There's a picnic that's going to happen up in Neshomic, up at the Manor House. Scientific work at Neshomic. Sea rise impact at Bass Creek, specialized hiking opportunities, bird walks, things of that nature. And finally, field trips. They've had full moon coastal walks. They represented the Green Expo, at the school fair, at volunteer programs, at winter open houses, and water quality issues. They're very much involved with the Peconic Estuary Partnership, citizen science opportunities, improving lines of communication. The last thing on the bottom I put down there is Neshomic Preserve prides itself on being a living laboratory, educating the public about the beauty of Shelter Island. And I asked them to see if we could share that information more. For instance, natural shorelines, something that we're trying to work towards in the Peconic Estuary. Well, Neshomic is a natural shoreline. What has been the impact? We need to get that word out. It's a model. Actually, it's probably one of the few places, although the Peconic Estuary, that doesn't have bulkheads, or low groins, or any other hardening of the shorelines. So the stuff that we've done on deer management, the forest restoration, the stuff we've done on sea rise, and how our marshes are adapting to sea rise. This study has been going on for years and years, for decades. That information needs to be shared. We will also this Thursday, so 2 days from now on May 18th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m., they're also going with a Zoom meeting, similar to what they had on Saturday. If anybody's available, just call the office, 631-749-1001, extension 2. And that's Rebecca Mondays, and you can get the link sent to you for that Thursday night Zoom meeting. All right. Well, one other thing I wanted to cover, this Saturday on May 20th at the Visitor Center, volunteer spring welcome. So if you want to work the Visitor Center, which I worked for 12 years when I got here, and it's a great opportunity to meet some fascinating people from all over the world. Setting up camera traps in the field, scanning Neshomic history on computers. There's plenty of volunteer work that has to be done. So if you're bored and you're looking for some volunteer work and you want to get out and work with Neshomic, that partnership is now rekindling and starting to come back to life. Do I have any questions from anybody on that?
Sounds good.
Okay, East End Supervisor and Mayor's Association, Jerry and I attended last week on May 10th from 12 to 2 o'clock at the Preston House in Riverhead. There was a welcome by Jay Schneiderman, who's the supervisor of Southampton. The first person that spoke was Joy Pack. She spoke on Sun River Health Clinics. And this is interesting. There are 11 different sites in Suffolk County. They also have mobile vans getting out to seasonal workers where they live and where they work. The goal is to increase healthcare access. That's what they do. Emphasis is on preventative care, provide food distribution in areas of need, be an advocate for the underserved, provide care that is needed regardless of cost. We make it affordable. And that tried to make, and they don't turn anybody away, by the way. No one gets turned away. They have fundraising events that help support the mission, but this Sun River Health Clinic, Joy did a great job, great presentation, very impactful on the people that were in attendance.
And locally, they have a clinic in Greenport and one in Southampton.
Right. Okay. Suffolk County Water, Joe Picorni was there. He's the Deputy CEO of Operations. Did a great presentation. A lot of learning going on here. There's new leadership with the Suffolk County Water Authority. Lots of turbulence going on today, particularly with contaminants. They're appearing in all parts of the county, particularly in the Huntington area. Drinking water standards becoming more stringent. Do private well owners seek water testing on a regular basis, something that they encourage? Even so, they're outside the Suffolk County Water Authority. They encourage people to, hey, have your water tested periodically. You got to know what you're drinking. Population shift due to COVID, the new demand, and it is increased dramatically, especially during year-round peak. Making water affordable, approximately $80 increase in the last 3 years. It's challenging Suffolk County Water Authority to keep water affordable. Looking for grants, both federal and state. Dry summers. The East End last summer, the consumption increased by 35% during peak summer months. 35% increase. Note, Suffolk County Water uses approximately 65 billion gallons of water each year. July 2010, which was 13 years ago, was the peak month of demand on the East End. We were in the severest drought that summer of 2010. Irrigation systems adds greatly to the problem, especially between the hours of 12 a.m. and 7 a.m. The number of systems countywide has increased dramatically. Approximately 50% of all Suffolk County Water Authority users that should be, have systems. That's unbelievable. I never expected it to be that high. We need to think about irrigation systems here on Shelter Island and address that issue. Tanks. They're going with larger tanks for reserves. The demand outdoes our supply. The results felt in the reserve tanks. The reserve tanks go down. We are not doing enough. The need to change behavior of our customers, not an easy task. That is something that we have to work on as we move forward here on the island. Building of our infrastructure, new wells. Takes over 1 year to secure permits for a brand new well. Building larger storage tanks increased during the fall, winter, and spring months. North Fork represents the biggest problem. The demand is very high due to farming and agricultural needs. They are now investing in a pipeline from the Pine Barrens out to Mattatuck on the North Fork to increase the aquifer on the North Fork because of those demands. This is the most important thing I got out of this. The even-odd rule. Suffolk County Water has adopted an odd-even water plan for all customers. The plan mandates that any customer whose home or business has an odd number address may only water their lawn, garden, or common areas on odd calendar days of the month. The same thing applies to the even homes numbered businesses and homes. Same thing. They need local government support for this. That's something that we should really start to think about and mention to the WAC is to think about even odd. Our wells yesterday, I just was in and out yesterday and listening to some of the well reports from the WAC. They weren't great. It's an indication that whether they're going to act now or they're going to wait for the next meeting, it's something that we really have to take a look at. You can't wait for the crisis. You have to anticipate the crisis. Getting the word out. They're thinking about TV ads, reaching out to the public. Conservation is needed now. New York State Assembly, automatic sprinkler heads, pressure controls, which regulate the amount of water used. They want to change those sprinkler heads and make sure that they have them. Suffolk County Water Authority Conservation Plan, the odd even plan is number one in their book. Number two, expanded water wise credits. This is important. The Suffolk County Water Authority expanded water wise account credit program. Customers can now receive $250 every 3 years for the following products: rain sensors, $75; smart controllers, $150; leak protection valves, $100; WaterSense shower heads, $20; WaterSense faucet aerators, $15; solar pool covers, which we talk about all the time, $75; sprinkler pressure regulators, $100; rain barrels, $75. Again, or you can maximize that out is $250. But if you have any of those things and you're on Suffolk County Water, you can apply for those things.
So it's about 130 people here on the island.
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Right.
Most of that.
Hopefully, I'll get this to the papers, by the way, so that you can put this in the paper if you choose to do so. What can towns and villages do to help? Adopt the odd even watering ordinance. 2, tell your residents about consumer credits. Number 3, here we are, designate a water conservation point person. Suffolk County will be providing weekly updates on the status of our system throughout the peak pumping season, so we can stay ahead of the demand and prepare our messaging accordingly. Designate a member of your administration to act as a point person for this communication will help us all stay informed. I would think that Joe might be the person we might want to designate as our point person, since he sits on the WAC. So that is that. I do have one quick one on the recreation. I think I'm going to yield to somebody and come back to that, get a drink of water. But I do want to make one point. In the paper last week, when I gave the deer and tick report, there was one correction in there on the article saying that the town board is going to go back and think about deer management. That's not the case. It's the committee that's going back to work to come up with suggestions to give to the town board for their review, how we can look at deer management in a different perspective. So it's not the town board. We have plenty on our plate. It's the committee themselves. The other thing I just wanted to say, the article was great, gave a lot of good information, but we'd be nowhere without our recreational hunters. I want to thank very, very much all the men and women that go out on some cold days and try to help us in terms of managing our herd. So just want that noted, for future reference. And I'll come back to the recreation meeting after we go around the table. Amber?
You need to cover community housing board since I was away. And then the only thing I have is we finally have an offer and acceptance for justice court clerk.
Yay.
So she will be starting the 30th, I believe, 2 weeks from today. Something to keep in mind, just because it was, we had to go through civil service and many interviews and things like that, is Nancy resigned at the end, March 31st, and she gave us 6 weeks' notice. It's taken that long for us to make it happen. So something to keep in mind when people, retire or give notice that, typically you think of 2 weeks. Yeah. She gave 6 weeks and it still wasn't enough for us to make it happen. Yeah. So I may want to consider that when we're.
I suggested a change in the, we were talking about accumulated sick leave, vacation days. I was saying that, that maybe we should ask for 4 weeks' notice as a matter of course. I don't see why it's difficult. Most people know their plans a month in advance. No, I mean, that's the minimum.
Right, yes,
So-
yes, yeah,
So,
it's the resolution, I was looking at that too, because
Right.
it's in the resolution for 2 weeks still.
Yeah, oh,
So,
BJ, I think that's a good point.
yeah.
oh, right, because then we'd be in conflict with the employee handbook. Okay, yes, okay, so we'll have to.
All right, well, so be it. Let's do it right, you know?
The other thing we
This and
might,
then do the other.
Yeah.
we might be a little bit more efficient in terms of conducting interviews. The 5 or 6 of us will always have to be here for all those interviews. You know, what people don't realize, a number of interviews for jobs in the, has been a lot lately. It's very time consuming.
I like
So I
our,
think we'd like to streamline that process a little bit.
and we have, and I like the new process where, you know, at least for some of the clerk positions, where we've streamlined it down to one town board member and
Right.
department heads or,
Yeah.
and then Coco and some Christina. So that's been working, I think. But still, just wending our way through the civil service process is onerous, to say the least, but that's all that I have.
Okay, BJ?
Yep, Water Advisory Committee yesterday. It's already been mentioned, little note of caution that the well levels are kind of below historical medians. But that being said, it didn't include the really heavy rainfall that we had. We were just a couple of days shy of that when the readings were taken. So they're waiting for clarity for the next month's meeting. You know, we're supposed to have these real-time well monitoring stations. There's only 2 of them that are online right now. So hopefully that will come on through the USGS sometime this year, and we'll have, you know, better able to be more in real time instead of this lag. So there's that. Fresh pond status, they're starting the work. I mean, it was sort of a lot of verbiage, but you know, they're on it, they're starting it, it looks good. The Menantic Creek Homeowners Association, Menantic Creek Watchers, I don't know, they're gonna have to come up with a name. They're gonna come to us next week, a week from today, to work session, to request that we establish a committee, sort of like the Fresh Pond Committee, along the same lines. So just to know that that's coming.
The ad hoc committee.
Ad hoc, right.
Task force. So
Right.
it's not a full-blown.
No. And they've raised donations to cover 1 monitoring station on Creek Health. And of course, I think the goal is to have 2 more stations. So, you know, this is, you know, hopefully over the summer, we get this, certainly at least the 1, but maybe all 3 up and running. And then we have the dredging, you know, we have a couple of readings before the dredging. The dredging happens sometime after October. We see if there's any impact, and we keep going, you know. But I think this is important work that they're doing, really important work. And we also discussed a letter to be sent out to the people in the center of the island in what we have referred to for quite a few years now as the triangle, not to be confused with the Bermuda Triangle. That it purportedly has high nitrogen levels. And so the WQI, for instance, has used that triangle to assign us sort of a more urgency to someone's request for an IA, for funding for an IA system. So the letter that we would like to send out in the next few weeks is going to ask residents, would you like your water tested? No confidentiality. The results are to be reported. We're going to break the triangle into little grids, sectors. So in this sector, 8 wells were tested and 3 came back with nitrogen above whatever number we decide, 19, 10, something like that. So probably 10. And so confidentiality would be protected, but we think that would give us just a lot of information for a lot of things. But it's just a baseline study here. So as I said, we hope to get that out soon. We have a couple of things. We would like to make this cost-free to the homeowner. So we have to go to WQI to see if, you know, whether the committee agrees. And Stephen has to assure us that that's an okay. We think it is.
Yeah, I think so.
In a preliminary review of the enabling legislation, an okay use of WQI funds. So that, and Meg and I have to work on a response card. So you can mail it back traditional way, or you could shoot a QR code and or you could dial into Coco. You know, I mean, we want to make it really easy for people to respond. And then Meg and I will have to coordinate with Coco, I hope, and the water testing company a schedule to get this actually done in one fell swoop, within a couple of days of, when we have it established, we'll have the testing done, and I don't know, I don't think mid-July, late July is too ambitious to say we might have a report on this, which I think is great. Anything to add, Meg, did I forget? Or Amber, you?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Okay.
It's mostly just a data collection exercise, so we have baseline data on this area.
Right.
And the triangle was determined by John Cronin
Right.
years ago when they did the same heat map that everybody always sees with the big red blob in the center of the island as potential high nitrates. And I think that was taken from a number of test wells and some other data points that they pulled that from in order to determine that area originally. So what we want to do is, because we don't have enough test wells ourselves as a town to actually be able to collect more accurate data for baseline, what we're trying to do is collect that data through the available wells on the island, and those are all residential wells. So it would really help, I think, the town and all the residents who live here have a better understanding of what the water quality really is in the center of the island as a whole, not just right here on 114, but in the entire center of the island, because the triangle really encapsulates the larger, denser part of the island. So it goes from like past mini golf all the way to Daniel Lord Road, over to Fresh Pond, and then all the way back up. So it really kind of captures the core center of the island without all the arms and legs.
And I think from our wastewater treatment, the modeling that was done, we were all a little surprised at the flows.
Right.
So I think this testing is kind of key, just to say, all right, well, there's some assumptions that we were disabused of.
And we
So
can
let's see.
when we break down that triangular area, we can do it based on watersheds.
Right.
So we have all the different watersheds mapped in GIS. So if we overlay the watersheds on the triangle, we can say, well, this watershed essentially goes that direction, and these are the numbers. This one goes this direction. These are the numbers that we're seeing. And, see how it all kind of maps out. And that'll really depend on how much of a response we get.
I know, we really
If
need,
we get a solid, decent response,
Yeah.
we'll have some good data.
Yeah.
And, we'll be able to say, hey, maybe it's not as bad as people think it is, or maybe there are hot spots, or maybe it's more generalized. And it'll really give us the information we need to make well-informed decisions moving forward as a town.
right, protect people's health.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately. And that's the other thing. It's the population that we're talking about is 500 structures is what we
Right, it's
estimate.
about,
So hopefully we get at least, a 20% response rate.
Right.
And well dispersed is kind of going to be important too. You don't want everybody in the same 4 blocks.
Right.
so we're working on that.
Steve, you have anything?
No, Mr. Supervisor. I got one.
Amber, you have anything?
Yeah, last one is on,
Well, the housing board just went over the ADU presentation that they did and the program from CDCLI for the grants. Just, they're still putting the ducks in a row. CDCLI has another meeting with the state, I guess. And so they don't have an application out yet. They're still waiting on some. And that's really what the discussion is about.
And I've been in touch with Matt Sherman. He put in an application with the Suffolk County Health Department to see what, not really an application, to see what, will be permitted there.
Okay.
And, if it was a subdivided parcel by right, we could have 4 houses and 4 accessory dwellings.
Right.
So we're gonna see if we can get a variance.
Do it without.
a subdivision.
Right, exactly. That would be great.
So he sent me all the paperwork. I'm gonna forward it to Richard Fleming and Al Krupski and see if they can help us with the county.
Yeah.
And the community housing board is also trying to organize a pre-meeting with all the people who are interested in possibly applying for the grants to see if their properties would qualify, what the restrictions would be, that kind of thing.
That's the one at the library?
I think so. Well, they're looking to do another one once they have.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because June 16th at the library at 5:30, there's gonna be an informational session.
Yeah, that's after they get more information from the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Jim, you got something else?
yeah, real quick. For the Recreation Committee, we met on Monday across the street at 1245, the community center. Senior luncheon, there's a barbecue that actually BJ, Ellen Gove, and Susan Binder worked last year, if you remember.
June 15th, it's on a Thursday at the community center. That is going to be made available. I'm sure it'll be in the paper, some type of notice
What time is
about that. I think it starts at noon. I have to check on that. Lifeguards, we're up to, we needed 8 lifeguards. We got all 8 lifeguards hired. By the way, just for information purposes, they start at $17 an hour, so it's not a bad paying job. Starting pay. 3 of our 8 lifeguards from last year are returning, 5 are brand new. The problem we run into is late August, early September, around Labor Day, probably the week or 2 before, kids go back to college and things of that nature, so that's an issue. But we do have 3 guaranteed lifeguards that are working through the end of the summer, so that should be helpful. Summer programs are filling up fast. You can go online. We offer a variety of programs for little kids, K to 6. If you're theatrical, we have a Ticket to Broadway. That's a nice program for kids. Shelter Island Junior Artists, if you want to participate in art. Summer STEAM program, which is science, technology, engineering, and art, and math, which is for K to 6. Colonial Multi-Sport program, it's a 2-week multi-sport program for kids K to 6. We give swim lessons. We have 3 levels. Level 1 is for ages 4 and up. Level 2 is a more advanced stage, and level 3 is for additional strokes and more advanced swimming techniques. We also run a summer tennis program. USA runs it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We break it down to grades 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and adults, 16 and older. And the final program is Sports Skills Program. It's a 2 sessions in the end of the summer, ages 5 through 16. We teach soccer, basketball, dodgeball, kickball, and there's an obstacle course. So those programs are filling up quite rapidly. We did have a little bit of an issue in the Fit Center, which with private trainers that you read about there, which we're working on, and that one of it obviously is liability kinds of issues, insurance concerns. And Stephen has been working with Bethany on that to close that gap. The job description things, I'm going to skip right over that. We'll talk about that later. Pickleball and tennis court schedule demands. There's such a growing demand for those 2 sports, particularly pickleball. I think, and I know Jim Reed, you're probably still on the line here, and I know you're very big into pickleball, but the demands are just growing. And 90% of the courts that we have on this island are privately owned, and we really have very, very limited court pickleball, tennis court, availability. So I think maybe the school and the town should start to talk about the facility. Who's going to, right now on a beautiful May day, June day, kids at school's in session, can't go out there till after school. So it's 3:30. It's a shame that retirees can't go out and play tennis at 10 o'clock in the morning on a beautiful May day. It's a problem. I know it's a security issue, but again, the maintenance of those courts, the number of courts that we have and the number of pickleball courts, we really have to look to expand that demand, because racket sports are very, very, very big and in high demand.
How does it work when people want to play? You just wait till?
They wait, yes. So you come down on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, you'll probably jump right on the court. 8 o'clock could be a little tight, and 9 o'clock, you're going to be waiting, and then in the hot summer, you come down on the court 1 or 2 o'clock and jump right out there because it's 90 degrees, nobody wants to go play.
Yeah.
They're all at the beach. But then later on in the afternoon at 5 or 6 o'clock, it starts filling back up again. So it's all weather, related. But the courts, when they're in demand, they're in demand. It's a question of just having enough
And I
facilities.
guess I should know this. You have to be a member of FIT to play there?
No, it's open to the public, anybody. Early voting is taking place across the street on June 17th, which is a Saturday, through June 25th, which is Sunday. So that's 9 total days that facility is going to be down for early voting. Anthony Rando wanted to remind the committee that the community center will be receiving the new mats are being delivered by August 2023. And then that's something that we approach you guys about. He stated that since he's been going to the Fit Center, I think this is kind of an important thing. I think the ladies have really appreciated this comment. He's been going there his entire life since he was a student. He says in the past 5 years, the facility has never, ever been better in terms of machinery, it being operational, supervision, cleanliness, everything about it. So he's, the only problem with it is it's a confined space. The demands, if you had a bigger area for a fit center, it would be used probably even more. The fact that it's tied into school, the hours are heavily regulated while school is in session. So, that's something to think about for planning for the future. And we're going to have one more meeting in June, and then we're going to take the summer off, let the summer programs go. But, just hats off to Bethany, hats off to Emily for doing the job that they do, with all the aides and people that work there. Thank you very much. You do a great job, and we really appreciate the effort you put into making these programs available to families and kids, in particular during the summer. Thank you.
Okay, I had a meeting this morning with Bethany and Brian Sherman and Julia Romanchuk and Dr. Bevelacqua about the archery program that we have, that I was gonna start. And originally, we thought we were gonna have it at the driving range at the golf course, but the golf course isn't keen on that, so we're looking at other options, but we have, Brian, identified a couple parcels that we should be able to use, so we're gonna look into that and get that program going. It's too much. Okay, that's it. Anybody in the audience have anything? Okay, if we don't have anything in the audience, I'm gonna, remind everybody, if you're watching live, today's the school vote.
Oh, yes, yeah, I meant,
Yeah.
and,
All right,
Just like-
we do have a town board meeting tonight, so I'm gonna make a motion, we go into executive session to discuss an employee history. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you.